The latest Pompey news, updates every day from the Pompey Sound news desk.
Andy Cullen has confirmed Pompey have an option to buy their exciting new signing Gustavo Caballero if his loan move is a success. The Paraguay under-23 international arrived late on deadline day, sealing a loan from the famous Brazilian club Santos. His move had been eagerly anticipated by fans, who had spotted the winger at various spots around Portsmouth on Sunday before the official announcement. Pompey are clearly hoping Caballero will be a hit, and have made sure they have an option to make the deal permanent at the end of the season. Cullen explained that a transfer fee has already been agreed upon, giving the club a clear path forward if the winger impresses, though they are under no obligation to buy him. The club's chief executive is confident Caballero will bring flair, pace and power to Fratton Park. He says Gustavo is one that was actually bubbling under for most of the window, but we completed it over the last few days when he was over at the weekend. We're delighted he's in, and I am sure we are all looking forward to what he will provide us on the wings. There is an option on him going forward. It's not an obligation, but it's there to protect Santos and to protect us. It is for a pre-agreed fee, so we know what the terms will be, should this be something we really want to do. Cullen noted that while similar deals are sometimes used in the Premier League to get around financial fair play rules, that wasn't the motivation here. In this case, that's not the issue, he said. With a player coming in from abroad who may be a big hit, at least you know what you're in for. Caballero was the third and final signing on a busy deadline day, capping off a transfer window that saw 7 new players join the Blues. Even with the departures of Callum Lang and Min-Yock Yang, and with Franco Ume out for the season, Pompey have significantly strengthened their options out wide. Milenik Ali and Keshi Anderson also arrived in January and have already made a positive impact, especially Luton loanee Ali. Now they're joined by Caballero, who is fresh from representing Paraguay 3 times at the 2024 Olympics in Paris. So how did Pompey land a player from the South American market? Cullen credits the club's head of recruitment Brad Wall, saying, "It's an exciting one. Brad is very diligent. He's scouted players across the world, so this is a player he particularly tracked. We really liked what we saw. We had people out there watching him, and I saw the clips. Somebody with power and pace who we feel can make a real impact on the right wing. Hopefully, we can all enjoy him over the next few months. It's exciting to sign a player from a club like Santos, which will forever be associated with Pelé."
Brazilian football. Indulge me having a word or so from personal experience, but I'm lucky enough to have been to Brazil and got several tastes of football, how football mad the country is, for one thing. I went down to Copacabana and watched some beach football from the touchline, played on sand, dry sand, that obviously is pockmarked because they're running around on it in bare feet, most of them. And what happens is, when somebody's got to leave the game because they say got to go back to work as a waiter or whatever, then anybody on the touchline who's invited can join in. And in next to no time, they invited the English guy for a laugh, and it was embarrassing because the only way you could travel with the ball was by doing travelling keepsy-upsies. Ever tried that? I couldn't do it. I tried dribbling normally, but the ball was going everywhere. And then I tried to close down one of their guys, the opposition, because he was coming towards me with the ball. And he went past me as though I wasn't there. But then, and here's my point, as he was going past me, for no reason whatsoever, except I'd had the audacity to try and tackle him, he elbowed me in the gob. And what I'm saying here is that Brazilian football is truly beautiful and incredibly skillful, but they're hard. Brazilian football is it is a tough game. I mean, one guy came off the game that we were playing, furious, big guy, solid, not particularly tall, but really meaty. And he came off fuming. And there'd been an argument in Portuguese, which I don't speak much of. And he went to his motorbike, which was by the pitch, opened the saddle, got out a huge screwdriver and came marching back onto the pitch. And I thought, here we go, I'm going to be a witness here. So I sort of backed away to the sidelines a little bit just in case. But there wasn't trouble. No, he got the screwdriver, he got the ball and he stabbed it to death. And somebody said to me, this is because he's been complaining that the ball isn't good enough. Ha! So he didn't know whose it was, but he stabbed it to death and the game carried on with a different ball. This is what I'm talking about. I know he's Paraguayan and not Brazilian, but he has done okay, played a dozen times for Santos. That is no mean feat. And if he brings half the skill of the Brazilians and half the commitment of the Brazilians to Fratton Park, he's going to stand out.
For all the speculation and anticipation that swirled around the young Scottish centre-back Luke Graham and Pompey's efforts to prize him away from Dundee, when the window slammed shut, Graham found himself still wearing the Dundee shirt. Only now that the interest has come to nothing are the press able to get their hands on a guesstimate of Pompey's final offer, which appears to be closer to $2 million than the amount last talked about, a mere $1 million. Here's what one of the major newspapers north of the border, the Courier, has to say today.
Dundee turned down what would have been a club record fee for star defender Luke Graham, Courier Sport understands. The Dark Blues were determined to stand strong in their valuation of the in-demand centre-back, amid fierce interest from Portsmouth. The current club record sale came in 2018 when Jack Hendry moved to Celtic for a fee of £1.5 million. It is understood Portsmouth's last offer topped that mark but did not meet the price Dundee see as acceptable for their impressive young star. Graham's rise has been spectacular in recent months after impressing in loan spells at Lushy United, Albion Rovers, Montrose and Falkirk. His first full season at Premiership level have seen him become a regular starter under head coach Stephen Pressley. That has brought international recognition with Scotland under-21 caps and admiring glances from other clubs. Aberdeen and QPR had been linked with interest in the 21-year-old, but it was Portsmouth who put money on the table. However, it was not enough for Dundee to part ways with the youngster, and that will see Luke Graham remain at Dens Park for the rest of the season.
So then, if all of this is to be believed, then Portsmouth rate this guy, Luke Graham, really highly. And so do Dundee, which is why their head coach, Stephen Pressley, insisted that the club held out for, I suppose, more than $2 million, possibly $3 million, which means he's got great potential, which means that he can certainly play at championship level, possibly in the Premier League. Pompey will be viewing him, as he's only 23, not only as somebody who can shore up the middle of our back four, but somebody who could just be a financial asset. Now, we're quite used to clubs getting a bee in their bonnet about signing somebody, being unable to sign that person, and then coming back for them later on. We see it all the time. It's exactly what happened with Callum Lang. Preston were not prepared to hear no for an answer. They paid through the nose, but they got what they wanted. Now, are Pompey, and Pompey have done it in the past, are Pompey going to return to the scene of what they would consider a crime, which was the rebuttal by Dundee of their 1.6, 1.7, whatever it was, maybe £2 million offer? They're going to be smarting from that because they clearly wanted the lad. There will be occasions towards the end of the season when our centre-halves won't quite get it right, and there'll be knowing looks exchanged between John Messino and Rich Hughes. If we'd had the boy Graham, that wouldn't have happened. And so they'll talk to the Eisners again and say, we want him to be first on our list. We still want him. He's got better since we were turned down. That means he's going to be a little bit more than what they valued him at last time round. This is all part of the fun of the behind-the-scenes games that football fans absolutely love, and I think an awful lot of people connected with football love, except some of the players. Because Pompey have got a rich vein, when they're fit, of centre-halves, and they don't want to be hearing that Pompey are thinking about buying a young centre-half who's younger than them, and a young centre-half who's valued higher than they are. It doesn't do your confidence any good. It doesn't do your sense of security any good. You know, you don't want to be playing for a team in the middle of nowhere this time next season because Pompey have done some smart recruitment and you're surplus to requirements. That's football, and it's a tough old game.
Senior officials at Portsmouth Football Club are concerned that the authorities might be taking aim at the club after a series of unfortunate incidents. An assistant referee had a game stopped claiming to have been struck on the head by an object thrown from stands occupied by Pompey fans. Portsmouth and Southampton are facing charges after a melee on the touchline during the South Coast derby. A ball boy was injured by an incendiary device thrown on the pitch allegedly from the away supporters' end, and a West Brom supporter had to have treatment after being hit with a coin. Nothing has been proven yet in connection with any of these episodes. But this is how seriously one of the incidents is being taken by the press of one set of Pompey's opponents who have been affected. This report is published in the Express and Star, which serves the Midlands. The great-grandson of West Brom legend Jeff Assel was struck on the head by a thrown coin while attending Albion's away fixture at Portsmouth on Saturday. 10-year-old George Furness was watching the match at Fratton Park in Portsmouth on Saturday, alongside his grandmother Dawn and other family members, representing 3 generations of Albion supporters in the away end. The incident occurred at half-time, as Dawn and George made their way to the concourse. George cried out after being hit, with another young supporter spotting that a 50p coin had struck his head. Dawn Assel, who founded the Jeff Assel Foundation and was awarded an MBE last year for services to footballers with dementia, described the incident as irresponsible and outrageous. "I get rivalry. I've been going to football long enough, but there was no rivalry," she said. Pompey were winning 2-0. "Every club has its idiots, but it just happened to be aimed at my grandson, who wouldn't harm a fly. He was just there to watch the club he loves." As the second half got underway, a lump developed where George had been hit, and he was taken to a first aid point, where he was treated with a cold compress. "My priority was keeping him calm," Dawn said. "But as his grandma, I couldn't believe he was watching the second half with a cold compress on his head. The more I stood there, the more angry I got. It could have blinded him."
Yeah, so here's the thing. We're pleased that his injury was not serious. We're ashamed and we feel for him that his injury took place at all. We have to feel for his grandma, who is a great woman and who does great things in aid of pursuing care and possibly cure for people with dementia after her father, who was indeed a legendary centre-forward, Jeff Assel, passed away with dementia, which has been, I believe, officially linked to his continuous heading of the ball, particularly in training, not just during the course of the game, but every day in training he would head the ball and head the ball and head the ball. So head injuries are something which are very, they're a trigger for her. Understandably, you do not bring your 10-year-old grandson or child to a football match expecting anything like that. And then there's whatever it was that was thrown at the assistant referee. Obviously, the finger of blame is going to be pointed at a Pompey fan, because that was the part of the stands, the ground where Pompey fans were seated. There was the melee on the touchline, which I think most people would agree it was handbags and it was 50-50, but there's all this stuff about bringing the game into disrepute and so on and so forth. And then, of course, we haven't mentioned in that summary of all these minor black marks. I say minor black marks. The 50p coin is a major black mark, and the firework, and the object thrown at the assistant referee. And they haven't mentioned the fact that somebody ran on the pitch. It was a one-man pitch invasion, although he was a big fella. It was almost like a 3-man pitch invasion. And it was slightly good-humoured, but there were obscene gestures, and the stewards weren't quite sure how to handle it. Nobody really wanted to go and bring him down with a flying tackle, because he was heading off the pitch at the other end from where he came on, I believe, at the moment he got on the pitch. And everybody knew he'd be exhausted by the time he got to the other end of the pitch. But the point is this. Sorry, I sound a little bit like the pub landlord, don't I? But the point is this. The accumulation of these incidents, thankfully none of them serious, the accumulation of them, though, means that we could be in for what sometimes happens in a football match, which is that the referee will book a player for a fairly ordinary foul. And as he goes for his yellow card, he starts pointing at different places on the pitch, indicating to everybody that the player is being booked because he did a foul there and another foul there and another foul there. None of them were particularly yellow cards, but he's fouling too often. And there's a danger that we as a club could be seen as a club which is at which things happen that shouldn't. And we hope and pray, of course, that nothing happens ever in the future that brings about any kind of a serious injury. But we have to stop these, I'm not going to say handbag-like episodes, because throwing a 50p at a human being is potentially a very serious assault. Simple as that. By presumably an adult, don't know, but we do know it was on a 10-year-old child, and we do know that 10-year-old child is the great-grandson of a football legend. So it's going to attract the right amount of attention. It should attract a lot of attention. Often these incidents don't, sadly. But because the victim had a very, very famous great-grandfather, then it gets talked about a lot in the press. And the danger is that the authorities will start to notice, and we could be in trouble. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but they can deduct points if they feel like it.